not too long ago, I was at Sydney's biggest rare plant fair and I picked up for myself a really surprising little plant, a native Australian succulent orchid. Really cool plant, looks like a whole bunch of little tongues, called Dockrillia linguiformis. And I got chatting with the old salty bloke who was selling them to me. Been growing orchids since the 60s, probably what I reckon I'm going to be like in a few decades time. Very, very passionate about his plants, and he started telling me stories about finding these succulent orchids out in habitat around Sydney. There's apparently 2 species that live out here, so that's what I'm doing today. I'm on a hunt for native succulent orchids. With any luck, we're going to track them down. So let's head off into the bush and see if we can unearth these things, shall we? Now, those 2 species that live in the environs around Sydney, we do have that tongue orchid, Dockrillia linguiformis, but the plant that I'm hunting for today is called Dockrillia teretifolia. Fascinating little thing, called a pencil orchid colloquially, and it's not actually my first time hunting for it. Come out here once before, having a real good look around, to no avail whatsoever. Done a bit of research since, but before we look for it now, I reckon I might flash back to that first adventure out here, that ill-fated venture. Didn't come up trumps, but you know, it certainly shaped how I'm going to look for these things today. So we're out here in the Royal National Park, stomping through the swamp on a hunt for Dockrillia teretifolia, and I've been given one clue, and one clue only, to help me find this thing, and that is that it grows on casuarinas. And so I'm down here wandering through a casuarina forest right on the edge of the mangrove swamp, hoping to find one of these things. Now, the problem is, call it stupidity, call it arrogance, I don't know what species of casuarina it grows on. I don't even actually know enough about casuarinas to know if there are many species growing around Sydney. But even more ridiculous, I didn't even look at a photo of this plant properly before I came out here. I guess I just assumed that it would present itself to me quite easily. And now that I'm here wandering fairly aimlessly, looking at every tree trunk, every nook in every tree, it's pretty clear that that's not the case. The thing that I don't understand is, why are these things succulent in the first place? It's not like Sydney's particularly dry. Maybe seeing them in habitat will answer that question. But I don't know. I'm starting to feel like this isn't going to be a fruitful venture today. I think I'm going to need to go back and do a bit more research, figure these plants out, learn a bit more about them, and come back out here another day. Oh, look at that, that's nice. It's very pretty fungus on a tree. So there's lovely things to see out here, but I'm just not seeing the plant that I'm hunting for. I guess we try again another day, and maybe we'll have more luck then. So that first journey was an absolute bust. What a waste of time. I didn't even actually know which side of the estuary that I needed to be looking on. I just had a vague sense that it was out here, and I spent hours wandering around aimlessly, finding absolutely nothing whatsoever. Some beautiful landscapes, don't get me wrong, but no Dockrillia teretifolia, and that really was the whole point. But on the way out, I started inspecting some of the sandstone cliffs, because that is the habitat of the other species I'm looking for, that tongue orchid, Dockrillia linguiformis. I've been told that this is as good a place as any to start my hunt for Dockrillia linguiformis. Now, I don't have a lot to work with here though. I've been told that they're quite prolific. They grow everywhere in the bush, but I've never seen one in my life, so that's not going to help me. I've been told they grow in dappled sun, and they grow in the Sydney area anyway on exposed sandstone. But everything here is exposed sandstone. So how the hell am I supposed to start? I guess I'm just going to go for a wander, and we'll see what shows up, shall we? I'll tell you what. This Dockrillia linguiformis had best be easier to find than the other one. You can see there's some mangrove swamps over here. We're kind of hugging the edge of this sandstone cliff face. You know, they grow on sandstone, so I think that's the best bet if we hang around in this sort of area, inspect all around here. And look what we have here. This looks like your classic Australian bong pit, hideaway of teenagers in the bush to go and smoke illicit drugs. But you know, I'm kind of surprised. I would have expected there to be some old improvised cutaway bongs and other rubbish. So maybe this is a good sign. Maybe it means that the youth of today either A, are a little bit more environmentally aware, or B, they've sworn off the drugs. It's just hard to know exactly what you're looking for. Hey, well, oh my God. Oh my God. Did you get a load of that? I can't believe it. I can't believe it. It's beautiful. Oh my God. I've actually found it. I can't believe it. With only those two clues to go with, dappled light and exposed sandstone, and here it is. It's an absolute beast. It's a thing of beauty. Dockrillia linguiformis. It's taken my words away. I don't know what to say, genuinely. I had a whole little spiel to go through, and it's lost to me. This is probably the most remarkable plant I've ever found out in the wild. It's genuinely a thing of beauty. And there's this huge beast here, and you can see the network of roots running out from it. But there's other little ones. There's another big one behind me, and there's like tiny little seedlings as well. Fantastic, like whole ecosystem of these things all growing here together. It's remarkable. So Dockrillia linguiformis, that name means tongue-shaped, and you can just see it in the shape of the leaves. They genuinely look like little miniature green tongues. They're very, very firm. You can feel that succulence in them, and it really answers that question I had around succulents and why an orchid growing in the Sydney habitat needs that ability to retain moisture. I mean, as I said, this is an environment that gets plenty of rain year round, and seeing it out here where it grows in habitat, it answers that question almost immediately. I had assumed that these plants would grow in crevices and cracks in the rock where there's an accumulation of plant debris, you know, humus, decaying leaves, that sort of thing, which would provide it with nutrients and also that moisture retention. But there's nothing of the sort going on here. This thing is growing on the exposed sandstone. There's a little bit of moss here, which I suppose would provide a bit of moisture retention, but by and large, this thing has no anything to trap moisture. So when it rains, this huge network of roots, I can only assume, would do its best to very rapidly suck up as much moisture as it possibly could before, you know, this would dry out within hours. There's nothing to hold moisture on this rock. And then it would store them in these leaves for a day where it really needs them. And it's clear that this plant is probably, I'm assuming, decades old. It would have endured some periods of occasional drought, and yet it just seems to be thriving and clearly reproducing and doing fantastically well. It's genuinely a remarkable plant, and I'm absolutely thrilled to have found it. Now, I'm kind of perched up on a log here, so I'm going to go see if I can find some more before I fall off and hurt myself. Wish me luck. Oh. Now, that old bloke told me that Dockrillia linguiformis is absolutely everywhere in the area that I live. But here's the problem. I'd never seen one in my life. But once you start getting a sense of where to look, they really do start popping up everywhere. There's one right here behind me, and they're all around me. I must have found 10, 20, 50 of them just by poking around. Always growing on sandstone outcrops like this, often embedded in a layer of moss, which I can only assume helps to preserve some of that moisture. But when you get a sense for what you're looking for, that old bloke was right. They really are everywhere around here. I can see another massive one just over there. Let me show you. Now, what are those telltale signs that I'm being drawn to, that grabs me and pulls me to their location? Well, almost always these things seem to be growing on the southern side of these sandstone outcrops. Now, of course, being in the southern hemisphere, that's the shady side, away from the direct scorching sunlight, and with a very healthy coverage of trees as well. Now, like I said, a whole lot of moss seems to be growing with them, and almost always these tendril-like roots that emerge from the center of the plant are the first thing you notice. They're very bold against the darker sandstone rock. But really, what an amazing plant. And I'm actually quite stunned that I've never noticed them before, because they're everywhere out here. So now, with Dockrillia linguiformis ticked off and under my belt, I'm back out here in the Royal National Park, and I reckon I stand a much better chance of finding that white whale, Dockrillia teretifolia. That's because I've got two advantages this time. First of all, I've done my proper research. I've actually looked at pictures of this plant. I know what it looks like now, as opposed to working off some vague notion of a pencil-like orchid. I also know the specific species of Casuarina that I'm going to find these plants on. Casuarina glauca, the swampy she oak, and that behind me is a forest of Casuarina glauca. So I reckon there's a pretty good chance of finding something in there. The second advantage that I've picked up, I think though, is actually seeing those tongue orchids in habitat. Seeing them growing on the bare rock faces, I think, is going to guide me on my hunt in here. Because the first time I was out here, I was looking in every nook in the tree, every fork, thinking that they'd be emerging epithetically out of that collected debris. But now that I know that that isn't necessarily the case, they may well just be growing on sheer tree trunk faces, I'll be changing up how I look. And it also leads me to a bit of a theory about that relationship with Casuarina glauca. Those Casuarinas, they have very textured, knobbly bark, kind of grows in fissures. And I reckon for a plant that's going to grow on the face of those plants, it gives them something for their roots to get purchased to. That's my theory. I'm going to go test it out and hopefully find one and see if I'm right. So let's dig in and maybe we'll have a bit more success this time. All right, in we go. Hopefully with a little bit more intelligence and a little bit less arrogance this time. As you can see, there are hundreds and hundreds of these Casuarinas, and I'm just trying to scan, walk into a branch, trying to scan them all. One disadvantage I have is that I'm not exactly sure how high off the ground these orchids grow. Like, if they're growing up in the canopies, what hope do I have? But hopefully there is some evidence of them a little bit lower to the ground. But for now, we just plunge on. As I head this way, the trees are sort of seemingly a little bit younger, or at least smaller. Maybe it's just that they're more densely packed and they're competing for nutrients. I don't know. But I just have a feeling, a hunch that I'm more likely to find this plant growing on something that's a bit older, a bit girthier. So I might turn my attentions back this way for now. I have been told that this plant grows out here. This isn't a fruitless hunt, I'm hoping. Tell you what, if this plant has died since the last time it was seen out here, I would be most frustrated, to put it gently. But I'm hopeful that's not the case. So let's just plunge on. You never know, we might see some other interesting things along the way. I'm not particularly big on my Australian botany. I wish I knew more about these plants, but I'm not a botanist, I'm an English teacher, so it doesn't necessarily lend itself to it. So you can see these are some bigger, older, gnarlier plants. The problem, and it's not a problem for the plant, but if you look at these Casuarina leaves, they themselves are terete in their growth. Now, terete means grows in a circular way, right? And so I'm sure this mimicry of this orchid, wherever it might be, is quite intentional. It's camouflage. I'm not supposed to be able to find it, but it means I've probably already looked at it and haven't even. Whoa! Hang on a second. Whoa! Oh, we've done it. We've done it. We've found it. And look at that. It was right there. I can't believe it. Unbelievable. Now, I don't know if it's coming up on the screen all that well, but here we go. Look at that. Look at that. And look at those roots. Like I said, just growing right into those ridges. Amazing. Amazing. So it's kind of like a bundle of sticks coming out the tree face. Bundle of, not sticks, I suppose. These they're like string beans, these leaves, and you can feel they're really very firm, very succulent. Amazing water storage capabilities, I'm sure. And the roots are just extending up that tree trunk. Quite incredible. So here it is, Dockrillia teretifolia. Visually, I would say this is not nearly as impressive as Dockrillia linguiformis, but in terms of actually finding it in habitat, this, to me, this is top notch, because this thing just blends into everything else. You can see those leaves, they're kind of like thicker versions of the casuarina leaves, and so that mimicry is in stark display here. Amazing camouflage. I mean, I was probably less than a metre away from it when I noticed it, and I've been scouring all of these trees. So it's a really exciting moment. I'm very, very pumped to see this here. Now, I don't have this plant in my collection, but I'll tell you what, I am going to be working towards it. The thing that I'm really interested in finding out, just with those Dockrillia linguiformis, when I found one, I started finding them everywhere. And now, seeing where this is and how it grows on the trunk of the tree in that epiphytic way, noticing these delicate tubular leaves, now that I know what to look for, am I going to start seeing it everywhere? Or is this an isolated plant? You know, I'm genuinely fascinated to find out if there's some kind of trick of the eye way of stumbling across these plants when you're in habitat or not. Now, you can't come out and look at a beautiful plant like this in its native environment without addressing the elephant in the room, which is poaching. That process of removing plants from habitat to add to our collections. Now, I don't know if there are more of these around here or not, whether this is an isolated plant or if they're on every tree within 100 metres of me. But it doesn't actually matter. Regardless of whether or not this plant is growing in abundance or otherwise, it's not ethical to take it out of its place. What happens when a horde of orchid collectors descend on this area and all decide that that's the plant for them? Soon you find yourself with habitats completely denuded of the plants that grow in them and make them incredibly special, all because, I suppose, of a selfish desire to collect, to own, to add to our collections. Sometimes we might pick up poached plants from habitat by accident without realising, buying it from an unethical seller. And that's not necessarily an issue if we're seeking to educate ourselves. But deliberately going out and collecting plants out of habitat, even if they're common, is not something that we should be doing. It's a practice that must be avoided at all costs. So I'm going to be appreciating the beauty of this little bundle of sticks right here, and I know where to find it if ever I want to look for it again. But I certainly won't be collecting the plant or even any parts of the plant to bring home with me. Besides, I know a crusty old bloke who would happily sell me one of these, probably for about 40 bucks anyway. And that'll make him happy, it'll make me happy, and it'll keep this plant very happy as well. Now, I'm going to go on a bit of a walk and see if we can find some more of these things out here. I'm hopeful that with my eyes attuned to its features, they'll start to present themselves quite magically. I know we're out here hunting for native orchids, but just pause and appreciate another fantastic Australian native succulent, your little salicornias, just growing straight out of the mud flats, copping all the sun and the salt, everything that nature throws at them. Fantastic. Anyway, back to the hunt at hand. Oh, I spotted one just straight through there. Oh, and there's another one. And another, oh yes, they're everywhere. Hang on, here we go. Let's look at the first one first. All right, so we've got one. And then a little one here, another little one here. And this tree is just covered in what I can assume are seedlings, all coming up the trunk. And so too, as you can see, this one just goes all the way up the trunk almost. I can see a really big one up in the crown of the tree. In fact, almost all of these trees around me in this little circle seem to be covered in them. This is none of them seemingly quite as big as the first one that I found, but lots of little babies, and then some remarkable ones up a bit higher. It's really hard to capture it with this light, but there's actually the mother of them all, an absolute beast, just up here about 2 meters above head height. Oh, I just keep noticing more little baby ones. Look at this. This is clearly a thriving little habitat. So it certainly seems like once you get your eye in, you do start noticing them everywhere. This is clearly a thriving habitat. There are seedlings just all over these trunks. It's genuinely amazing to see. And they're beautiful plants. I can't imagine what this would be like when they're in flower. Might be worth another pilgrimage out here just to witness it. Now, growing and collecting plants is absolutely a worthwhile and wonderful experience, but I'll tell you what, nothing quite matches coming out into habitat and seeing them growing just as they do in nature. It's an almost spiritual kind of experience, and I hope if ever the opportunity arises, you grab that opportunity and you run with it, because I don't know, making this video has been one of the most amazing things I think I've ever done in my life. Now, it goes without saying, of course, that I'm going to be leaving these plants right here so they have long and fruitful lives, and they're here if ever anyone else stumbles across them, and they can enjoy them in habitat just like I have. This episode of Arid Zine has been sponsored by my Patreon, which is called the Desert Underground. It's basically a fully rad little community of absolute Arid Zine freaks. People who are so diehard, they want more, they want bonus episodes, they want my written stuff. You know, I know it's not for everyone, but if that's for you, please do check it out. But you can also support me by checking out this cool merch. I'm really thankful for the support. Honestly, this channel has just blown up since I started it about a year ago. Better than my wildest dreams. So I'm out here living the dream amongst these plants and living the dream online as well. It's a truly remarkable thing, life-changing, genuinely life-changing. So thank you everybody. And if you haven't subscribed, please hit that subscribe button so you can get more of this zany plant stuff every single week. They come out on Mondays. Monday is Australian time anyway. And it's always just a genuine joy putting stuff together for you guys. So anyway, that's Arid Zine for this week. My name's Michael, and I hope you've enjoyed it. I certainly have, and I'll catch you next time.